Good morning, everybody. I'm James McKillop.
Good morning. We're going to tell you a little bit about our lives before, during and after diagnosis of dementia. Close it. Right, okay. Right, stand back. We were a reasonably happy family with 4 children doing what most families do: day trips, dancing classes, brownies, boys' brigade and other school activities. Our lives revolved around the children. Very gradually, over a number of years, things began to change and tensions began to build up. It was small things to begin with. James would get annoyed with the children because they wouldn't do things that he wanted them to. He would pick a fight over the slightest thing and was very argumentative and unreasonable. The children stopped having their friends round because their dad would embarrass them. They would go to their rooms as soon as they heard him come in from work. They didn't want to be near him. His aggression frightened everyone. They were scared.
I gave up my hobbies and spent all of my spare time with the children from an early age. They were my reason to live. Why were they being so ungrateful, not wanting to include me in their lives? I still did the things that made them laugh with delight as children. So why was it not funny anymore?
James had suffered from high blood pressure for a number of years and slowly started to forget things at work, things he had done on a daily basis for years. He would forget the names of people he had worked with, lost his house keys several times, and occasionally would go out without locking the door. He had difficulties counting money, but most serious of all, he began making mistakes while driving. I had to stop him taking the children out in the car. I was worried about his capabilities. He made errors and was oblivious to them. He was an accident waiting to happen.
Why did Maureen nag so much? What was her problem? So what if I made some mistakes or forgot things? Who doesn't? Anyway, I am a good, safe driver and always have been. I've never been involved in a crash. I have a clean driving license. Drivers would do well to emulate me. I don't understand what was wrong with my counting.
He became more aggressive, losing his temper at the slightest thing. He would say I'd done something or moved something when I hadn't, and I couldn't convince him otherwise. I began going out less with my friends. Each time I would get ready to go out, whether to a meeting or for a social evening, I got endless questions and accusations. The children by this time didn't like the person their dad had become. I certainly didn't like him. I would even go so far as to say I hated him.
I detested home life. The whole family had turned against me. When I put something down, I later went back to get it. It was gone. Naturally, I got a bit annoyed, and maybe I was a bit short-tempered when they denied moving things or hiding things. It seemed like they were plotting against me and trying to drive me mad, as if I were the guilty party. They stopped consulting me about anything, and I felt ostracized. I became an unwelcome stranger to my own home. Naturally, this did little for my self-esteem and sense of well-being.
When the children were 20, 18, 15 and 9, we finally got the doctor to agree for James to see a neurologist, but this was likely to take about a year. I couldn't wait that long. I had decided that I could no longer live with this man, so we agreed for him to go privately for the scan, on the condition that if it showed nothing was wrong, I was leaving him and taking the children. While we were at the hospital, I picked up a booklet about dementia. I was amazed at the similarities to James. This was the first inclination that he may have a type of dementia. I tried to talk to him about it, but all he would say was, "I'm not like that. There is nothing wrong with me. I'm fine."
How dare she say there might be something wrong with my brain? I may have a few little problems, but not to the extent that it was serious. Dementia is for old people. I was only in my mid-50s. It was the stress of home life which was getting to me. It was part of a conspiracy against me. I suspect their motives.
Later, James had more tests. Then, out of the blue, I had a visit from a psychiatrist and a psychiatric nurse. They asked lots of questions about James before I noticed a change in him. Then they told me he had vascular dementia. That is when I became a carer. Nobody asked me if I wanted to be one. It was just assumed that I would take on the role. Well, you might think, why not? After all, we had been married for 27 years. But the fact was, my life had become a living hell with this devil, who had changed so much from the man I had married. And although it was a relief to know that there was a reason for this behaviour, you cannot flick a switch and make the past go away and the old feelings come back. Caring means not only helping with things like medication, getting dressed, constant reminders, and general everyday things. It also means you have to be on your guard all of the time, as I never know what he is getting up to, which might cause him harm.
I was shocked to hear of dementia, as I had met it in the later stages many a time when I worked in mental health hospitals. I was devastated. Now that we know something is wrong, I don't see why things cannot go back to the way they were. I was ill at the time with an undiagnosed condition. Forgive and forget is my motto. We can't turn back the clock, so let's move on. Let's start afresh.
Once I knew what was wrong with James, I felt really guilty that I hadn't suspected sooner. But how could I? I knew nothing of dementia. It's not as though it's like a rash or a pain that suddenly appears. It creeps up on you a little at a time. Why would you suspect that someone who is being more irritable than usual or a little more forgetful had dementia, especially when they are in their 50s? It's not until there are a lot of things wrong that you seek help, and as you see in my case, it took 3 years to get a diagnosis. When James started taking medication, he calmed down, and the behavioural problems slowly started to disappear. The children called them his happy pills, and think sometimes I should take them.
Why didn't Maureen do something sooner if I was being such a tyrant? I was going through catastrophic changes in my life, but was being misunderstood. I was crying out in desperation for help, but no one was listening, least of all my wife and children. I lurched from crisis to crisis. I was living a daily nightmare.
Our children suffered in their own way. Our eldest son had just started university, studying civil engineering, when he started having panic attacks. He had to drop out and was never able to go back. Our youngest son developed obsessive-compulsive disorder, going around touching everything. Our eldest daughter kept herself to herself, and the younger one moved out. I eventually had to give up one of my church activities, which was a really hard decision to make. I was captain of a boys' brigade company for 10 years, but found the stress of home life, work, and this too much. I knew that by giving up, the 45 boys in my charge may not have a future in the company, but my home and family had to come first. My whole family was crumbling around me, and I couldn't do anything about it.
What was wrong with my family? Why was Lindsay so moody, and what was so terrible that made Joanne move out? Why was Lewis keeping himself shut away in his room? And what was wrong with Ross that he had to touch everything? They were just typical teenagers, feeling their way in life, battling hormonal changes. I now know that they had been badly affected by the situation at home, and wish that I had been able to understand the effects my dementia had on them, my behaviour had on them. But unfortunately, dementia doesn't give you that privilege. We were all blundering about in the dark. This shows the crucial need of an early diagnosis.
It is now 11 years this month since James was diagnosed, although looking back, he showed signs some years before that. The changes in him were subtle and gradual, but nonetheless devastating.
With excellent support from Alzheimer Scotland and later Brenda of Turning Point Scotland, and of course Maureen, I have been able to turn my life around and live a positive, fruitful life. Where I used to sit in front of a blank TV screen all day, I am now involved in lots of committees and was motivated to start the Scottish Dementia Working Group, which is a group run for and by people with dementia. We set the agenda, decide what speakers to ask, and only people with dementia can vote. I feel more calm and in control of most areas of my life.
James is no longer aggressive or argumentative, and it's great to see him having a purpose in life again. The home situation has improved beyond belief. The stimulation he gets meets his needs.
I brought out a book of photographs and have articles printed in books about dementia. I found that I became more creative and have written several articles about communicating with people with dementia, driving in dementia, and early diagnosis. I have also produced pop music. I am invited onto government committees which deal with dementia issues. Despite the limitations imposed by dementia, I now lead a happy, fulfilling life. Family life has improved more than I could have expected. I know my limitation. There are things I can no longer do, and I have to expect that. But there are still a lot of things I can do, and I spend my energies wisely.
The family have all moved on with their lives. Lindsay is an occupational therapist in mental health in London. Joanne has her own house and career and calls regularly on her dad for help, mainly with the garden. Lewis finally overcame his panic attacks and recently stopped taking his medication. He now lives in Australia. I don't think he will come back to stay here as he has met a lovely Australian girl. And lovely girl versus mother, I don't stand a chance. They have been home twice to visit in the last couple of years. Our youngest son, Ross, graduated from university a few months ago and at the moment is managing a Pizza Hut. He no longer has problems with obsessive-compulsive disorder. They all get on really well with their dad now. I am now involved again in the Boys Brigade. I help out in the company that I left, and I am a training officer for Glasgow Battalion. As I still work in the mornings only, I write notes for James on a notice board in our kitchen to remind him of what he has on that day, what the weather is like, and what type of outdoor clothing, headwear, and footwear he needs to put on.
Our lives will never be the same again, but we're still together, despite the odds of splitting up and enjoying what time we have left. I look forward to Maureen coming home from work, especially if I have no meetings, as we go out to various places for coffee or just to have a nice walk. We usually spend a Saturday out on a trip somewhere, even if it is raining, always raining in Scotland. Life is worth living again. It is like a second honeymoon. Luckily, with excellent post-diagnostic support, I got my life back on track. Sadly, not everyone in Europe can access such support. That is a task for you when you return to your respective countries. Despite the limitations, I am enjoying my life with dementia. I get to go places and meet very interesting people who dedicate their working lives to improve the lives of people with dementia around the world. I sincerely thank them. Maureen is now my rock, and life is rosy and happy. It could have been so different. Sincere thanks to all those who helped me along the way.
Looking back, I could never have envisaged such a happy outcome. Things are getting more difficult as James becomes more confused and forgetful, and that is to be expected. But I feel we are stronger and more able to cope with whatever comes our way. I am certainly a lot stronger and feel that I have become a more compassionate and tolerant person. Where before, when I once couldn't stand James, I am now so proud of him and the amount of work he has done in the field of dementia.
Right. We'd like to finish off with a short piece called I Remember It Well from the musical Gigi by French writer Colette. The lyrics are by Alan J. Lerner and Frederick Lowe. Now, this is exactly how our day goes. We met at 9.
We met at 8.
I was in time.
No, you were late.
Ah, yes, I remember it well. We dined with friends.
We dined alone.
A tenor sang.
A baritone.
Ah, yes, I remember it well. That dazzling April moon.
There was none that night, and the month was June.
That's right, that's right.
It warms my heart to know that you remember still the way you do.
Ah, yes, I remember it well. How often I thought of that Friday
Monday
night when we had our last rendezvous. And somehow I foolishly wondered if you might by some chance be thinking of it too. That carriage ride.
you walked me home.
You lost a glove.
I lost a comb.
Ah, yes, I remember it well. That brilliant sky.
We had some rain
Those Russian songs.
from sunny Spain.
Ah, yes, I remember it well. You wore a gown of gold.
Oh, I was all in blue.
Am I getting old?
Oh no, not you. How strong you were, how young and gay, a prince of love in every way.
Ah, yes, I remember it well.
Thank you.